Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we're taking a slow, unhurried journey into one of the darker corners of human history, a chapter often glossed over but rich, with stories that deserve a quiet, thoughtful hearing. We'll be stepping into the shoes of those who endured the unimaginable hardships of the transatlantic slave trade, living through daily struggles that would test the limits of endurance and spirit. As always, our pace is gentle, our tone calm, no dramatic twists or sudden shocks, just the steady rhythm of history unfolding, rich with detail and subtle dry humor, designed to soothe your mind and ease you toward rest. Imagine yourself as part of this past, feeling the texture of the world around you, the smells, the sounds, the weight of existence itself. So settle in. Let the day's worries fade like the distant horizon, and join me as we explore why life was brutally hard for a 17th-century transatlantic slave, and more. Imagine yourself waking not in the comfort of a soft bed or the quiet of your own room, but in a cramped, dark hold below the deck of a ship bound for an unknown future. The air is thick, heavy with the mingled scent of salt, sweat, and damp wood. Your limbs ache from the tight confines, wrists chafed raw from the rough iron shackles that bind you to the wooden bench. Around you, hundreds of others share this same fate, pressed shoulder to shoulder, the faint murmurs of their voices blending into a low, constant hum, like the ocean waves themselves. There is no room to stretch, no quiet place to rest. Every breath tastes faintly of the sea, and the faint, bitter tang of fear. Your world is reduced to this narrow space, broken only by the occasional creak of the ship's timbers and the dull thud of footsteps overhead. The heat builds slowly, pressing down as the sun climbs higher, the ship's hull trapping the warmth like a furnace. You feel the steady rhythm of the ocean rocking you, sometimes soothing, often relentless. Every day here is a battle against your own body's limits. Your skin feels sticky with salt and grime. Your muscles cramp from stillness. Your throat scratches from the stale air. Time loses meaning in this dim, enclosed prison. You learn to measure it in the coming and going of rations. Small portions of coarse, damp food, barely enough to keep the hunger at bay. Yet, amid this suffering, there is a strange persistence. You find moments to imagine the world beyond the ship. Waves stretching endlessly to the horizon, the smell of rain on distant lands, the sound of wind through leaves. These tiny mental escapes become a fragile lifeline, a quiet rebellion against the crushing reality. As you settle into this endless journey, your mind drifts between past and present, pain and faint hope. You understand that this is not just a passage across water, but a passage through time, one marked by endurance, loss, and the slow unfolding of human history. Imagine now the first waking moments of each day aboard this floating cage. The faint light filtering through narrow barred openings above barely touches the murky hold, where shadows cling to every surface like a second skin. Your eyes adjust slowly, making out the shapes of those crammed beside you. Some faces etched with quiet despair, others hard with silent resolve. The smell is a persistent companion, a mixture of brine, sweat, stale food, and the faintest trace of fear. Your body has become a map of discomfort. The rough wooden bench presses into your back, your legs, curled tight to fit the space, numb and stiff from hours of immobility. The shackles bite into your wrists and ankles, a constant reminder of your captivity. Each tiny movement causes a ripple of pain that spreads outward, a subtle ache that settles into your bones and marrow. There is a soundscape here, but not one of peaceful waves or distant seabirds. Instead, it is the chorus of human suffering, muffled into low murmurs and occasional coughs, that echo softly through the hold's tight quarters. Some quietly pray, others whisper stories of home or lost loved ones, a fragile attempt to hold on to identity and hope. Every now and then, a stifled sob or a whispered curse punctuates the hum of voices, swallowed quickly by the thick air. Food arrives with a predictability as merciless as the tides. A creak overhead signals the lowering of a small basket, swinging gently in the hands of the crew above. The rations are meager, a small portion of damp, gritty porridge that clings to the tongue, sometimes a piece of hard biscuit, dry and crumbly. Water, if it comes, is rationed thinly, often brackish, tinged with the sharp taste of iron from the ship's tanks. Your body craves nourishment, but your mind grows hungrier still, for freedom, for air that isn't recycled, for a breath that isn't thick with despair. The relentless heat and humidity make the air heavy, almost viscous. You imagine the sun beyond the deck's shadowed confines, a blazing orb that could either scorch or soothe. Here below, the temperature rises slowly but steadily, sweat soaking into the threadbare clothes clinging to your skin. The monotony of movement, or lack thereof, is punctuated by the jarring moments when the ship shifts abruptly with the swell of the ocean. The hold creaks and groans. Bodies press together and jostle in cramped proximity. A sudden lurch sends a wave of nausea rolling through you, the taste of salt rising bitterly in your throat. Time is measured not by hours but by rhythms, the ritual of the rations, the pattern of waves against the hull, the footsteps and murmurs overhead. Sleep comes fitfully, curled in a ball to conserve space and heat, though the bench's unforgiving surface turns every movement into a minor ordeal. Dreams, if they come, are often of home, lush fields, rivers, familiar voices, before the harsh reality of the ship pulls you back. In this world, privacy is a memory long gone. Every breath, every cough, every sigh shared with strangers pressed tight beside you. The body heat of dozens mingles into a single heavy warmth. You learn to endure the constant proximity, the lack of air, the stifling closeness, as if the hold itself is a living, breathing entity, unyielding and indifferent. Your mind begins to weave protective stories, small mental sanctuaries where you can retreat from the grinding physicality. You imagine a soft breeze ruffling your hair, the gentle splash of water against the shore, the coolness of shade beneath a tree. These daydreams become rituals, repeated like whispered prayers to keep the flicker of your humanity alive. As days stretch into weeks, you come to understand the slow march of this passage. No landmarks, no reprieve, only the endless expanse of ocean outside your dim cage. The very sea that carries you forward also reminds you of your powerlessness, a vast and indifferent witness to your suffering. This is life aboard a slave ship, a relentless, numbing existence, where every moment is weighted with discomfort, despair, and a fragile hope that someday, somehow, the journey will end. Now imagine yourself caught in the endless routine of days that bleed into one another, punctuated only by the creaking of timbers and the distant calls of seagulls. So far away, they might as well be echoes from another world. You learn to measure time not by clocks or calendars, but by the subtle shifts in the ship's rhythm, the sway of the waves, the clang of the chains, the shuffle of feet overhead. Your muscles stiffen from disuse, turning into unfamiliar weights within your own body. The cramped position becomes a cruel sculptor, bending your spine, curling your fingers, and locking your knees in a rigid posture that is simultaneously numbing and aching. Every small twitch feels like an act of rebellion against the confines that hold you. The air itself becomes a slow, unyielding opponent. Thick and humid, it presses against your skin like a damp blanket, laden with the mingled scents of salt, sweat, and something faintly metallic, a reminder of rusting chains and the cold iron clasping your wrists and ankles. The salt clings to your lips and the back of your throat, dry and abrasive. Imagine how your senses adapt, or rather, how they shrink and retreat. Sight narrows to the dim shadows of fellow captives, their faces turned away, or pressed close in shared misery. Sound blurs into a steady, low hum of whispered conversations and suppressed coughs, broken occasionally by the distant creak of the ship, or the faint slap of waves against the hull. The taste of stale bread and gritty porridge becomes an unwelcome but predictable presence on your tongue. You might think that the body's response to such captivity would be resignation, but instead it becomes a slow battle between endurance and despair. Skin chafes under rough clothes and coarse rope, sores begin to form where flesh presses against unforgiving wood, and yet you persist, breathing quietly, conserving energy, trying not to draw attention. It's a lesson in invisibility, learning to be as small and unnoticeable as possible in a space where privacy is non-existent, and every noise can draw punishment. Your mind drifts to memories of home, of green fields stretching beneath a wide sky, of the sound of rain on leaves, or the taste of fresh fruit. These memories become precious pockets of light in the gloom, whispered like secrets shared only with yourself. They are your armor against the crushing weight of your reality. And yet, even amidst this suffering, the human spirit flickers in small ways. Quiet acts of kindness, a shared piece of biscuit, a whispered word of encouragement, a hand squeezed briefly in solidarity. These moments, though fleeting, remind you that even in the most confined and desperate conditions, connection survives. The ship's crew, a constant presence above, move with indifferent purpose. Their footsteps echo overhead, bringing news of storms or changing winds, or sometimes the dreaded announcement of punishments or punishments narrowly avoided. From below you catch fragments of their speech, harsh, clipped commands, or the occasional grudging acknowledgement of your endurance. Sleep remains elusive. When it comes, it is shallow and haunted by the creak of the ship, the groan of timbers, and the murmur of human voices blending with the endless ocean's sigh. You lie in a restless tangle, eyes closed against the darkness, clinging to fragments of dreams that promise freedom or at least respite. In this suspended existence, every sense becomes heightened, every small change noted and catalogued. The world outside the hold, vast, unpredictable and terrifying, remains just beyond reach, a constant reminder of both hope and despair. And so, you wait for landfall, for release, for an end to the ceaseless voyage. But most days you simply wait for the next ration, the next breath, the next moment of quiet. This is the slow, grinding reality of life in the bowels of a transatlantic slave ship. It is a world defined by confinement, endurance, and a quiet, aching hope that someday, somewhere, the chains will fall away. Imagine yourself walking the uneven streets of 18th-century Kingston, Jamaica, a bustling colonial port teeming with sailors, merchants, and enslaved people caught in the web of commerce and survival. The air is thick with the smell of salt from the harbor, mingled with the scent of spices and the faint, persistent haze of smoke from countless fires. Among the many lives lived here, there was one man named Paul Bogle, though you might never have heard of him before. His story is not the kind of heroic tale shouted from banners or emblazoned on statues. Instead, it is a quieter, grittier story of endurance, defiance, and the slow burning of a fire that would one day change a nation. Paul was born into a world where freedom was a distant dream. Even if he was born free or enslaved, we don't know for certain. What we do know is that by the 1860s, he had emerged as a Baptist deacon and a community leader. His was a life spent walking the narrow line between survival and resistance, preaching hope in a place where despair often felt like the only constant. Picture the rough wooden pulpit from which he spoke, his voice steady but soft, carrying messages of faith and resilience to congregations packed into humble churches. These gatherings were more than spiritual refuges. They were places where ideas grew quietly, like seedlings in shaded soil. Paul's world was marked by relentless hardship. Poverty was widespread, and the promise of freedom offered after the abolition of slavery in 1838 had not delivered the equitable life many hoped for. Land ownership was rare, jobs were scarce, and the powerful planter class maintained a tight grip on wealth and influence. Imagine the tension simmering beneath the surface of daily life, the simmering discontent of people denied justice, their hopes deferred. Paul became a voice for this frustration, though he carried it with the calm of a man who knew the weight of patience. In 1865, that simmering tension boiled over in what became known as the Morant Bay Rebellion. It was not a violent uprising of marauding armies, but a desperate plea from people pushed beyond their limits, marching to demand basic rights, justice, and an end to oppressive laws. Visualize the narrow, dusty streets where the march unfolded, the faces of men and women both weary and resolute. Paul Bogle led the crowd with a quiet determination, not as a warrior but as a shepherd guiding his flock through stormy weather. The rebellion was brutally suppressed. Martial law was declared, and the colonial government responded with overwhelming force. Paul Bogle was captured, tried swiftly, and executed. The official reports painted him as a dangerous agitator, a threat to order. Yet, to those who knew him, he was a man who had dared to speak the truth to power. His legacy would not end with his death. Over time, Paul Bogle became a symbol, not of violence but of resilience, moral courage, and the slow, steady push toward justice in the face of overwhelming odds. As you imagine this quiet yet powerful figure, think of the countless others whose names were never recorded but whose spirits flickered in the same way, small flames of resistance in a dark and stormy sea. This is a story of defiance not through grand gestures but through the persistence of hope and the courage to endure. The air hangs heavy with the smell of sea salt and the faint tang of smoke from the many fires burning through the settlement. You find yourself walking alongside Paul Bogle, not as a spectator, but as a quiet companion on his weary path through the streets of Kingston. Every step is measured, each one weighted with the knowledge that his world is a precarious one. In this sprawling port city, the daily rhythm is dictated by survival, the relentless search for food, shelter, and a sliver of dignity in a society that often denies it. The planter class watches from their elevated estates, while the people Paul speaks for carry the weariness of hard labor and harder hope. His sermons are not grandiose performances, but steady conversations held in simple wooden churches. The pews creak beneath the shifting weight of the congregation, and the soft rustle of worn clothing fills the quiet spaces between words. His voice carries not with force but with calm conviction, each phrase a balm to weary souls. Paul's influence grows not through flamboyant rebellion, but through patient leadership. He moves quietly among the people, listening more than speaking, gathering stories of injustice, pain, and fleeting moments of joy. His faith is a thread woven through the fabric of community life, offering solace while also fanning the faint sparks of resistance. As tensions rise, the weight of oppression becomes almost tangible. The colonial laws, arbitrary and harsh, shape every aspect of daily existence. Curfews confine movement, taxes squeeze meager earnings, and the threat of punishment hangs like a constant shadow. You feel the pressure mounting, the quiet anger simmering beneath polite conversation and forced smiles. Paul stands at the edge of this unrest, aware that the moment for change is drawing near, though none can predict how it will unfold. When the Morant Bay March begins, it's not a march of warriors, but of people exhausted by waiting. Their voices rise not in shouts of fury, but in measured calls for justice, echoing through the narrow streets lined with weathered wooden homes. Paul walks at the forefront, steady and resolute, his eyes reflecting the weight of the cause and the fragility of hope. The colonial response is swift and merciless. Martial law descends, and the streets become a somber stage for a brutal suppression. You witness the grim aftermath: empty homes, broken spirits, and the haunting absence of those who dared to hope aloud. Paul's capture and execution are swift, almost clinical. The official narrative paints him as a troublemaker, but history whispers a different truth. A man who bore the burdens of his people and paid the ultimate price for his quiet courage. In the years that follow, his story becomes a quiet legend, a steady ember in the collective memory. Not a tale of victory, but of persistence. A reminder that even in the darkest times, small acts of defiance can ripple through history. You close this chapter carrying the weight of that quiet resistance, a testament to the resilience of those forced to endure unimaginable hardship without losing their humanity. As the echoes of that fateful day in Morant Bay fade into memory, the consequences ripple far beyond the immediate tragedy. You find yourself walking through the aftermath, not just of shattered buildings, but of fractured communities and altered futures. Paul Bogle's execution marks a grim chapter, but it also ignites a slow-burning change that no colonial decree can fully erase. In the quiet moments that follow, the people carry on, navigating a world still marred by injustice but now tempered by a new kind of awareness. Churches become gathering places not just for worship, but for whispered discussions about rights, dignity, and the possibility of a different tomorrow. The rhythms of daily life continue, shaped by both hardship and hope. Paul's story is told softly, passed from one generation to the next, not with triumphant fanfare, but with a steady reverence. His courage becomes a subtle undercurrent beneath the loud proclamations of empire. You feel the weight of that legacy, one of quiet resistance and enduring spirit. Around you, the landscape shifts slowly. The sugar plantations still stretch as far as the eye can see, their fields a reminder of the relentless demands placed on those who worked them. The distant hum of the sea carries stories of ships arriving and departing, vessels that once carried people like Paul and those he stood for, across turbulent waters and uncertain futures. Despite the oppressive structures, moments of resilience emerge. A shared meal among neighbors, the gentle hum of a folk song sung softly at dusk, the laughter of children playing among the ruins. These small acts of life and continuity offer a counterpoint to the harsh realities. You are reminded that history is not only the story of grand events and famous names, but also of these quiet, persistent threads woven through everyday existence. Paul Bogle's life and death are part of this fabric, a testament to the power of steadfastness in the face of overwhelming odds. As you reflect on his journey, there is a subtle invitation to recognize the complexities beneath simple labels. He was neither hero nor villain in the conventional sense, but a man shaped by his time and place, who chose to stand for something greater than himself. In that choice lies the essence of his story. The sun begins to dip lower now, casting long shadows across the worn streets and quiet fields. You take one last look at this chapter of history, not with the urgency of conflict, but with the calm understanding of a story told slowly, for those who listen with patience. The island air shifts softly as you step away from the remembered turmoil of Morant Bay, and toward the quieter, more elusive stories hidden beneath Jamaica's sunlit soil. Here, buried deep beneath centuries of earth and time, lie fragments of a culture both resilient and mysterious, waiting patiently to be uncovered by curious hands. You find yourself walking slowly through a grove of ancient trees, their branches whispering secrets in a gentle breeze. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, mottled with patches of dense foliage and open dirt paths. There is a weight to this place, a sense of layers, like pages pressed tightly together in a well-worn book, each one filled with stories waiting to be read. Archaeologists have long been drawn to these lands, their careful excavations peeling back the surface to reveal traces of the Taino people, the island's original inhabitants. Though their presence was nearly erased by the arrival of Europeans, the Taino left behind subtle footprints, pottery shards, carved tools, and faint impressions of a life once vibrant and interconnected. The artifacts tell you much, though never everything. You might linger over the smooth curve of a broken pot rim, imagining the hands that shaped it, hands that moved with purpose and care, crafting vessels, not just for utility, but as expressions of culture and community. The soft patina of age adds a muted sheen, as if the object itself is reluctant to reveal all it knows. Nearby, fragments of stone tools and remnants of hearths suggest moments of daily life, a meal prepared carefully over open flames, conversations carried out beneath star-speckled skies, rituals performed to honor the earth and sky. These traces are quiet, often overlooked, but they hum with an almost tangible presence. Yet mystery remains. Some aspects of Taino life are shrouded in uncertainty. Their language only partially understood, many customs lost to time. You might pause here, letting your mind drift gently through these gaps in knowledge. The unknown is not unsettling but inviting, a soft call to wonder. Occasionally, strange markings carved into stone or etched on pottery provoke questions. Were these symbols practical, spiritual, or something in between? Did they guide travelers, mark territories, or tell stories only known to the initiated? The answers remain elusive, tucked away beneath layers of history, like a whisper just out of reach. As you walk further, the sun filters through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. The delicate balance of light and shadow mirrors the way history itself balances between what is known and what is imagined. This is not a story of grand conquests or dramatic battles, but of subtle survival and cultural endurance. You notice the faint scent of damp earth mingling with the sweetness of flowering plants, an olfactory reminder that the past is always present, enfolded in the natural world that continues its quiet cycles. The landscape is both a resting place and a storyteller, holding memories in its stones, soil, and roots. There is comfort here in the slow unfolding of understanding, in the gentle unveiling of a past that does not demand but invites. It is the kind of story that lulls you, not with excitement, but with the steady rhythm of discovery. The deeper you delve into the Taino world, the more you become aware of their profound relationship with the land and sea, a quiet coexistence shaped over generations. The island's coastline, fringed with coral reefs and gentle waves, provided not only sustenance, but a spiritual tether to the natural world. In your mind's eye, you trace the slow rhythm of daily life by the shore, fishermen setting out in dugout canoes, their paddles dipping softly into turquoise water, nets woven from natural fibers, carefully repaired under the shade of broadleaf trees. The taste of fresh fish grilled over smoldering coals, the smoke curling lazily toward the sky. The simplicity of these moments is their strength, a steady beat amid the uncertainty of change. Archaeological sites reveal remnants of shell middens, ancient refuse heaps that whisper stories of meals shared and seasons past. You consider the texture of worn shells, the roughness of coral fragments pressed into the sand, the scent of salt and seaweed carried on a light breeze. These humble remnants connect you intimately to the lives of those who came before. Yet there is also a poignancy in what these artifacts represent: a culture disrupted, lives uprooted, and knowledge nearly lost. The Taino people's decline came swiftly with the arrival of Europeans, whose diseases and conquests spread like an unrelenting tide. But beneath this shadow lies resilience. Taino influence persists, woven into the island's language, music and traditions, subtle yet enduring. You might find yourself reflecting on the paradox of absence and presence, how something can vanish yet remain, like a faint echo carried on the wind. It is a meditation in patience and quiet understanding, a reminder that history is not just grand events, but the slow, steady accumulation of small moments. The mysteries of Taino cosmology invite you next, with stories told through oral tradition and archaeological clues. You listen as if the forest itself breathes these tales of Zimis, spirit beings that inhabited rocks, rivers, and trees, of ceremonies conducted beneath the full moon, where rhythmic drums summoned ancestral voices. These rituals, though glimpsed only in fragments, hint at a worldview rich with symbolism and reverence for the forces of nature. The ceremonial ball game, Beatty, played on stone courts, was more than a pastime. It was a bridge between the earthly and the divine. You can almost hear the muted thud of the rubber ball, the steady chant of players, the watchful eyes of the community. Such cultural practices invite a slow, reverent exploration, rather than quick answers. They are a quiet mystery that does not demand resolution, but offers an invitation to pause and listen, to let the mind wander through shadows and light. And so, as the sun arcs toward the horizon, you remain here in this place of gentle mysteries, letting the rhythm of the past soothe your thoughts, carrying you slowly toward the next part of the journey. As evening shadows lengthen, your thoughts turn to the enduring legacy of the Taino people, quietly etched into the very soil beneath your feet. Their world was not just one of survival, but of deep connection, woven through stories, songs, and sacred places that carried meaning beyond the everyday. Imagine the slow movement of hands shaping clay into pottery vessels, each stroke deliberate, each design telling a story passed down through generations. These pots, simple yet elegant, were the vessels not only for food but for memory, carrying the imprint of a people who revered the earth's gifts. The faint scent of baked clay and smoke lingers in the air, a subtle reminder of lives lived close to the elements. Buried beneath layers of time, fragments of ceremonial objects reveal glimpses of rituals meant to bind communities together and honor the spirits of ancestors. The Zemi figures, carved with care and precision, stand as silent sentinels of faith and identity. They speak in a language without words, inviting you to contemplate beliefs that sustained hope and order in uncertain times. Yet, much remains elusive. The whispers of the past are often fragmented, leaving gaps where the full story might have been. This partial silence invites patience, a gentle letting go of the need for complete understanding. Instead, you lean into the textures of what remains: the rough bark of ceiba trees considered sacred, the faint echoes of drumbeats that once filled open plazas, the cool touch of river stones worn smooth by centuries. The mystery here is not a puzzle to solve swiftly but a slow unfolding of connection, a meditation on absence and presence, loss and continuity. It is a reminder that history's quiet corners often hold the richest stories, waiting to be heard by those willing to listen with gentle attention. So as night falls softly, you rest here in the calm of these lingering traces, an invitation to surrender to the quiet pulse of time and let your thoughts drift with the ebb and flow of history's gentle tide. As the night settles softly, your thoughts shift to a very different rhythm. The The lives of the colonial elite in the Caribbean islands during the era of the transatlantic slave trade. This world, so distant in experience from the daily grind of the enslaved, pulses with a quiet opulence, a stark contrast that reveals much about power, privilege, and survival. Picture yourself standing within the high stone walls of a sprawling sugar plantation estate, surrounded by meticulously manicured gardens that stretch outward in symmetrical order. The air here is thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and citrus, a gentle perfume carefully cultivated to mask harsher realities. The mansion itself is an imposing structure. Broad verandas with delicate wooden railings, wide shuttered windows, and polished floors reflecting the soft glow of oil lamps. Inside, the rooms are cool and quiet, furnished with heavy drapes, carved mahogany furniture, and shelves lined with leather-bound books. Here, the lives of plantation owners and overseers unfold in slow, measured routines. Morning light filters in as the household awakens. The lady of the house arranging fresh flowers, the master poring over ledgers that track every barrel of sugar, and every person forced into labor. Your attention lingers on the subtle details, the clink of fine china at breakfast, the soft rustle of silk dresses as conversations drift from business to gossip, the distant echo of horses' hooves on the gravel drive. These are the rhythms of an elite world, insulated yet inseparable from the harsh labor that sustains it. Yet beneath this veneer lies a complex network of power, rigid social hierarchies, unwritten codes of conduct, and a constant undercurrent of anxiety about control and rebellion. The plantation owners' wealth depended entirely on the suffering and toil of the enslaved, a fact often acknowledged only in hushed tones or carefully veiled justifications. You might find yourself pondering the quiet loneliness behind the grand facades, the isolation of privilege, the unspoken tensions, the fragility of a system built on exploitation. The nights here may be calm on the surface, but the undercurrents ripple with uncertainty, a reminder that luxury and cruelty were deeply entwined. In this moment your mind moves slowly through the estate's grand halls and shaded gardens, absorbing the atmosphere of power tempered by unease. This glimpse into elite daily life offers a counterpoint to earlier struggles, enriching your understanding of the world shaped by the transatlantic slave trade. As you let these images settle, a gentle calm begins to descend, inviting you to rest within the quiet complexity of history's contrasts. As you linger in the estate's quiet spaces, your attention turns to the lives of the overseers, the middle ground between plantation owners and the enslaved laborers. Their role is complex, often marked by conflicted loyalties and a constant balancing act between authority and vulnerability. Imagine yourself stepping into the modest quarters just beyond the grand mansion, simpler, more functional, with rough wooden furniture and the lingering scent of tobacco and sweat. The overseer's day begins long before the household stirs, with a brisk walk across the fields to inspect the rows of sugarcane, the rustle of leaves whispering secrets of growth and hardship. The overseer must maintain a strict eye, ensuring work continues without faltering. His voice is firm but measured, issuing commands with a practiced calm designed to keep tension just below the surface. Yet beneath the facade of control, you sense the weight of responsibility pressing down, the knowledge that his position depends on a delicate balance of fear and order. The midday sun beats down relentlessly, and you imagine the overseer's boots sinking slightly into the soft earth, sweat tracing slow paths down his back. His interactions with the enslaved are brief but charged. A nod here, a curt instruction there, navigating a world where any misstep could tip the fragile equilibrium toward chaos. Evenings find him in a small room by the edge of the estate, perhaps sharing a sparse meal with a fellow overseer or retreating into solitude. The quiet here is not peace, but a tense pause before the cycle begins anew. There is no luxury, only the uneasy privilege of proximity to power without full command. Your mind traces the complexities of this position, caught between two worlds, wielding authority yet vulnerable to suspicion from both sides. The overseer's existence is a constant negotiation, marked by fatigue and a persistent undercurrent of unease. As night deepens, you feel the subtle hum of this layered social structure, from opulent mansions to austere quarters, all interwoven by the shared but sharply divided fabric of life on the plantation. This perspective adds texture and nuance, a reminder that history's stories are rarely simple or singular. Let these slow-moving images unfold as you settle deeper into calm, carrying with them the quiet weight of lives intertwined in a difficult past. As darkness fully envelops the plantation, your thoughts drift toward the lives of the colonial merchants and their families who remain far removed from the fields, yet whose fortunes depend entirely on the labor you have witnessed. These merchants live in coastal towns where the scent of salt air mingles with the faint aroma of spices and goods recently unloaded from ships. Imagine yourself walking slowly along narrow cobblestone streets lined with stout warehouses and modest homes, the evening light casting long shadows across faded shop signs. The merchant's world is quieter but no less entangled in the machinery of the trade. Ledgers full of numbers track cargo profits and losses, while letters and newspapers relay distant news that shapes decisions made behind closed doors. The merchants engage in a steady rhythm of negotiations, contracts, and careful investments, their lives marked by a cautious optimism that balances hope with the ever-present risk of maritime disasters or political upheaval. Their homes are modest but comfortable, furnished with sturdy wooden tables, brass candlesticks, and well-worn maps that speak of faraway places. Within these rooms, conversations flow in hushed tones, discussions of market prices, the weather's impact on crops, the arrival of new ships. There is little fanfare, just the slow, steady pulse of commerce, sustained by a vast, often unseen network of human toil and suffering. As you take in this quieter side of the transatlantic world, the contrast sharpens. The gentle sway of merchant life set against the harsh demands of the plantations, and the brutal journeys across the ocean. Here is a world cushioned by distance and wealth, yet inseparably linked to the hardships that sustain it. You sense the quiet tension beneath the calm, the awareness that fortunes rest on fragile foundations, and that the human cost is largely concealed beneath polished surfaces and carefully maintained facades. As the night deepens, your mind slowly unwinds these intricate layers, the complex web of lives and roles settling into a soft, reflective calm. The slow unfolding of these stories invites rest, a gentle reminder of history's many voices, and the quiet spaces between. With this, the final threads of today's journey begin to fade, leaving a lingering sense of connection and contemplation as you drift toward sleep. The journey from the African coast across the Atlantic is a slow, grueling, and unimaginably complex chapter in this story. You find yourself on the deck of a tightly packed slave ship, the vast ocean stretching endlessly beyond, with the sky's muted blues and grays folding into the steady rhythm of the waves. The air here is thick, a dense mixture of salt, sweat, and wood, punctuated faintly by the distant cries of gulls and the creaking of the ship's timbers. The sun beats down, its heat filtered through worn sails that flap lazily in the steady breeze. This is the threshold between worlds, where countless lives were forced into an uncertain, terrifying passage. Imagine the ship's hold below, a shadowed labyrinth of cramped spaces where the enslaved are confined, The wooden beams press close overhead, and the coolness of the dim interior contrasts sharply with the blazing heat above. The scent here is different, heavy with the faint but persistent smell of earth, wood, and human presence. Movement is limited to slow, careful shifts. The space is a tight cage where every breath is a reminder of confinement. Though the ship's crew moves with practiced efficiency, their tasks are relentless, checking on supplies, adjusting sails, and maintaining the vessel's slow progress. The steady creak of ropes and the splash of waves against the hull create a rhythmic backdrop, a kind of dull music to this extended ordeal. Outside, the horizon holds no promise, only the endless expanse of water and sky. Time stretches thin, measured in days and nights that blend together under the unchanging canopy of clouds and stars. In this part of the journey, you sense the physical and mental strain that deepens with each passing hour, the ache of separation, the dullness of routine, the constant low hum of survival. These quiet details, the sway of the ship, the distant call of seabirds, the muted conversations of sailors, form a slow, immersive soundscape, inviting your mind to drift gently as you explore the vastness and stillness of the Middle Passage. You find yourself on the deck of a 17th-century slave ship, anchored just off the rugged African coastline. The sea stretches out endlessly in every direction, a vast expanse of deep blue broken only by the steady rhythm of rolling waves. Above, the sky is a muted canvas of soft grays and pale blues, thick clouds hanging low as if weighed down by the weight of this journey. The air is heavy, thick with salt and seaweed, mixed with the sharp tang of tar from the ship's weathered wooden planks. Around you, the creaking of timber and the snap of sails in the breeze form a slow, relentless soundtrack. The wind carries distant cries of seabirds, their wings slicing through the air above the roiling surf below. The sun burns quietly behind the clouds, casting a diffuse, gentle light over the ship's deck. The wood beneath your feet is worn smooth, its surface rough but familiar beneath bare toes. The ship's rigging sways softly, ropes humming and whispering in the wind, their movements a constant hypnotic dance. You lean against the rail, peering over the edge, where the water churns dark and restless, foam frothing white against the hull. The smell here is a sharp contrast to the air above. A faint but persistent odor of damp wood, mingled with the faintest trace of smoke, and something more elusive, the scent of human presence confined and pressed tight within these walls. Below deck, the atmosphere shifts entirely. The hold is a shadowed, stifling cavern, a place where light barely penetrates and the air hangs heavy with the scent of sweat, damp earth, and wood soaked with salt water. The space is narrow and low, forcing those within to crouch or lie down in a cramped, uneasy arrangement. You can hear the soft, almost imperceptible sounds of movement, quiet shifts, the scrape of wood on wood, the low murmur of voices barely audible over the constant creak of the ship's timbers. Here the journey takes on a weight all its own. The darkness presses close, the absence of sunlight replaced by a steady, unchanging gloom. The temperature is cooler but heavy, the stillness punctuated only by the faint rustling of clothes, or the occasional sigh. Back on deck, the crew moves with methodical calm. Their faces, weathered and worn from countless voyages, betray no surprise or hesitation. Every action is precise, adjusting sails, checking the rigging, steering the ship through the vast blue unknown. Their voices are low, commands given with quiet authority, each word measured and deliberate. As the ship inches forward, the horizon remains unchanged, a seamless meeting of sea and sky, indifferent and unyielding. Days pass with little variation, The sun rises and falls in the same soft arc. The stars wheel overhead in silent, eternal procession. Time itself seems to slow, stretch thin between moments of calm and the steady, unrelenting movement of the ship. Within this monotony, the mind begins to wander. The endless swell of the ocean creates a rhythmic rocking, a gentle lullaby that both soothes and unsettles. The cries of gulls overhead punctuate the stillness, their sharp calls echoing against the steady pulse of waves against the hull. There is a quiet tension in the air, a sense of anticipation mixed with resignation. The journey is long, uncertain, and fraught with invisible dangers, storms that could strike without warning, the hidden menace of disease, the slow erosion of hope that comes with days spent confined and adrift. Yet beneath this there is also a strange kind of order. The ship itself is a microcosm of a larger world, its routines governed by the tides, the wind, and the steady hands of those who navigate its course. The sails fill and fall with the breeze, ropes tighten and slacken, and the ship moves steadily onward through the vast indifferent ocean. Here, on this floating world between continents, the vastness of the sea mirrors the vastness of human endurance. A slow, measured journey through uncertainty, marked by quiet moments of reflection, and the ceaseless, gentle rhythm of the waves. Beneath the creaking deckboards, the hold is a world apart, dark, still, and thick, with a quiet tension that never quite lifts. The faint glow of a single lantern, its flame flickering uncertainly in the humid air, casts long shadows along the rough timber walls. You sit pressed against the bulkhead, feeling the coarse grain of the wood bite softly into your back. The air is dense and warm, heavy with the mingled scent of damp cloth, sweat, and something more elusive, a lingering trace of sea brine, mixed with the faint bitterness of fear. Space here is a luxury no one can afford. Bodies lie packed shoulder to shoulder, limbs often tangled and bent into uncomfortable shapes. There is no room to stretch or shift comfortably. The hold is a narrow, suffocating tunnel carved from wood and shadow. Your breathing is shallow, measured, partly out of habit, partly in an effort to conserve energy in this confined place where each inhale tastes of recycled air and faint dust. Occasionally the quiet is broken by the soft shuffling movement of those around you. Someone shifts their weight, a quiet sigh slips out, or a whispered word is exchanged. These small sounds feel disproportionately loud in the stillness, like distant echoes bouncing off unseen walls. The slow rocking of the ship lulls and unsettles at once, like the gentle pulse of a heartbeat that cannot quite be heard but is deeply felt. The humidity clings to your skin, and your clothes are damp, sticky in the heat. The wood beneath you is rough and uneven, pressing into muscles already aching from the cramped posture. There's no privacy here, no escape from the weight of bodies pressed so close you can feel the faintest rise and fall of each breath, the subtle warmth of skin so near it blurs the boundaries between self and others. As hours stretch into days, the monotony of confinement breeds a peculiar rhythm. You begin to notice the faint sounds beyond the hold, the creak of rigging overhead, the low murmur of crew voices carried down through the timbers, the distant cries of seabirds riding the wind above. These sounds become a fragile thread connecting you to the world outside, a reminder that the ship moves, carrying you toward a destination unknown. The uncertainty is perhaps the heaviest burden. Time loses meaning here. Moments blur into one another like the waves that crash relentlessly against the hull. The mind, left to wander, drifts between memories of a life left behind and the unknown that lies ahead. The world feels reduced to this tight space, this wooden cage rocked by the indifferent ocean. Hunger gnaws quietly, a persistent ache beneath everything else. The provisions stored below are meager, and often spoiled by the damp air. Food is rationed strictly. The crew dispenses small, coarse servings that offer little comfort beyond a brief reprieve from emptiness. Water is likewise scarce, handed out in small sips, the brackish taste, leaving a dry bitterness on the tongue. Illness waits in the shadows, an unseen companion to every moment. The close quarters and stale air are fertile ground for fevers, coughs, and weakness to spread like a slow-moving tide. Whispers of people fading away, their breaths growing shallow and labored, drift through the darkness. The ship's surgeons, if present, move with quiet efficiency, their tools and remedies as limited as the hope they can offer. Yet even here, amid the overwhelming weight of suffering and confinement, life persists in small, subtle ways. Hands brush briefly in silent comfort, murmured prayers slip from cracked lips, and in the darkest corners, quiet songs rise. Soft melodies carried on ragged breaths that reach across the shadows. The hold is a world unto itself, a stark contrast to the open sea just beyond the thick wooden planks. It is a place where time stretches and contracts in the tension between despair and endurance. The journey continues, slow and unyielding, propelled by the ceaseless rhythm of waves and the fragile resilience of those who endure. Days melt quietly into nights, marked only by the changing angle of the faint light that filters down from the grates above. Each new dawn brings no promise of relief, only a gradual shifting of bodies and the ever-present motion of the ship. The wooden beams groan softly, a low, steady hum that becomes part of the rhythm of this confined existence. You notice how even small changes feel monumental here. A slight coolness in the air as the wind shifts direction, a rare splash of fresh water on the deck above, or the distant sound of sails flapping in a stronger breeze. These moments are fragile anchors, holding your awareness steady amidst the endless dark. The sense of isolation deepens with each passing hour. Your thoughts begin to spiral quietly, memories surfacing with vivid clarity. Childhood days under a wide sky, the scent of earth after rain, the sound of voices in a familiar language. These reveries contrast sharply with the present, and you find yourself clinging to them as if they were lifelines. Occasionally the crew descends, their footsteps heavy and deliberate on the deck above. They speak in low tones, their voices muffled but unmistakably foreign. Their presence is a reminder of the world beyond these walls, but also a source of unease. You cannot be certain whether their intent is kindness or cruelty, though history whispers the harsher truth. As the days wear on, the toll on your body becomes undeniable. Muscles stiffen from disuse, joints ache from cramped postures, and your skin itches beneath layers of rough fabric. Small injuries, scrapes, chafing, bruises, go unnoticed or untreated. The darkness seems to press inward, dulling the senses even as it heightens a constant, low anxiety. In the midst of this time warps, minutes seem to stretch into eternities, while entire days pass in a foggy blur. You find yourself watching the patterns of light and shadow, the slow drift of dust motes in the scant illumination, the faint pulse of the ship beneath your feet. These become your companions, silent witnesses to a journey marked by endurance more than hope. Every now and then, a whispered name or a soft murmur ripples through the hold. These are quiet affirmations of shared humanity, small acts of resistance against the overwhelming forces seeking to erase individuality. In these moments, the collective breath of those gathered here seems to pulse in unison, a fragile yet persistent heartbeat in the darkness. The endless sway of the ocean carries the ship forward, relentless and indifferent. You sense the vastness beyond the planks, the infinite expanse of water stretching beyond sight. This thought, both terrifying and strangely soothing, becomes a steady undercurrent beneath the surface of fear and uncertainty. Though the future remains obscured, there is an undeniable strength in the quiet persistence of life here. Each breath drawn, each small movement made in defiance of the cramped and stifling space, is a testament to resilience. A silent promise that the story does not end here, that beyond this darkened hold, a new chapter awaits. The air begins to change, though only subtly at first. It is heavier now, tinged with the faint saltiness of coastal waters and the distant scent of unfamiliar plants carried by the breeze. The ship's creaking seems to slow, as if acknowledging the approach to land, while above, the deck buzzes with hurried voices and the clatter of preparations. Below, the hold remains unchanged, a dark, confined world where time has stretched thin, and the rhythms of the ocean's sway pulse steadily beneath you. Yet, an undercurrent of anticipation threads through the murmur of voices, a shared tension about what lies beyond the wooden walls. You feel the shift in the ship's motion, subtle but distinct, as it begins to maneuver closer to shore. The deep, steady thrum of the ocean gives way to a gentler, more irregular rhythm. The constant scent of brine mingles now with something new. The warmth of sunlit air, the sharp green aroma of vegetation, and a faint, distant smokiness that hints at human presence. The dim light from above becomes a little brighter, the great slats allowing the golden rays of early morning sun to pierce through the darkness. It dances lightly across your skin, a quiet reminder of the world beyond the confines of this journey. Outside, the hull of the ship creaks against the dock. You sense the arrival at a strange alien place, where the rules of your previous world no longer apply. The sounds above grow louder and more distinct: shouts, footsteps, the metallic clang of chains, and the creak of ropes being secured. Despite the thick veil of uncertainty, there is a strange, almost surreal calm. The steady sway beneath your feet slows, replaced by the vibration of men moving above. You hear the distant splash of water as smaller boats are lowered, a soft ripple spreading outward from the ship's side. A heavy silence falls for a moment below decks. The hold is still, save for the faint shuffle of bodies adjusting to what's coming next. The air is thick with unspoken fears and fragile hopes, the weight of what has been endured mingling with the dread of what is to come. And yet amidst this there is the quiet strength of those who have survived the long voyage, those who have endured the darkness, the heat, the confines, the uncertainty. This strength, nearly invisible, holds steady like a flickering candle in the night, refusing to be extinguished. As the ship's gangplank is lowered, you brace yourself for the unknown, a new chapter where survival will take on a different meaning, and where the struggle to maintain identity and dignity will face its greatest test. The ship lingers at the edge of the water, anchored but restless, as if aware of the transition about to occur. Above, men move with a practiced efficiency, ropes taut, wooden planks shifting into position, voices rising in clipped commands that echo faintly down into the hold. Each sound carries a weight, a reminder that the world outside the walls of wood and iron is not one you have known, and that its rhythms and expectations are entirely new. The floor beneath your feet trembles subtly as the gangplank meets the dock, its vibrations traveling through the ship's frame and into the hold. You notice the change in the air, the cool, salty scent of the open ocean now mingled with the earthy aroma of soil, the faint sweetness of tropical foliage, and the acrid tang of smoke curling from distant fires. The blend is alien, and your senses strain to catalogue each new note, each unfamiliar hint of place. Movements above are brisk, and occasionally the shadow of a figure passes over the light filtering through the grates. You can tell they are men accustomed to authority, accustomed to bending others to their will, their voices carrying a rhythm of dominance, sharp, deliberate, and precise. Each step, each shuffle, each clatter against wood, is a reminder that this world operates under strict codes that you have not yet learned but will be expected to obey. The hold itself seems to pulse in response, a living chamber that has endured the tension of the voyage and now braces for the uncertainty of arrival. The faint creak of the hull under shifting weight, the subtle thump of chains being adjusted above, the occasional cough or sigh from fellow passengers, all form a symphony of quiet anticipation. Time stretches, and in the stretching every breath, every shuffle, every sound is amplified, each a note in the composition of this moment. You feel the first tremor of movement as the doors to the hold are unlatched. The lock turns with a metallic click, and a shaft of light cuts sharply across the floor. The temperature of the air changes instantly, warmer now, heavier, carrying the rich aroma of the new land. The shadows of figures above loom larger, their forms momentarily silhouetted against the light before moving aside to reveal the gangplank fully. Above you the voices continue, some sharp with command, some murmured, almost conversational, but all purposeful. The air of order is undeniable, and yet, it is a foreign order, a set of rules and expectations not written for you. The realization settles slowly. The journey may have ended, but survival, in this new place, will demand a different vigilance, a different form of resilience. Every sound, every scent, every vibration is both a threat and a guide. Your senses, dulled by days in darkness, and the monotony of the hold, sharpen again. The world outside is alive, and though it is unfamiliar and demanding, it is also a space where endurance, patience, and careful observation will shape what remains of your life. And as the first hint of footsteps approaches, the world above and below poised on the threshold of contact, there is a quiet, almost imperceptible tension. The voyage has ended, but the reality of arrival, of facing this new existence, begins. The ramp of the gangplank touches the dock, and with it, a new rhythm enters the hold. The thrum of wooden boards shifting under weight, the metallic jingle of shackles, and the quiet shuffle of feet, all converge into a cadence that seems to pulse with the life of this unfamiliar place. Above, voices rise in measured tones, neither hurried nor loud, but carrying authority that you cannot ignore. The sunlight spilling into the hold is stark and unfamiliar, a contrast to the dim, damp darkness you have grown accustomed to. It illuminates textures long unseen, the grain of the wooden floor, the fibers of ropes, the uneven, calloused hands of those who guide you upward. The heat of the day presses in, settling against your skin, seeping through the gaps in the floorboards, and stirring an awareness of how different this environment feels. Movement above grows more deliberate. Figures come into focus. Overseers, dock workers, and merchants, each occupying their space with a confident, practiced ease. Their presence is a language in itself. Gestures, glances, the tilt of a hat, the set of a shoulder, conveying instructions, expectations, and hierarchy without uttering a single word. You sense immediately that understanding this language will be essential to navigating what comes next. The hold vibrates faintly with anticipation as the doors begin to open wider. A faint breeze carries the scents of the docks, brine from the water, pungent earth from the nearby soil, the faint smoke of distant fires, and the acrid tang of tar and rope. Every inhalation is layered, complex, and oddly intimate in its foreignness. The air feels alive, charged with movement and purpose, a stark contrast to the static, suffocating hold you have known. Chains rattle softly as they are adjusted. A hand reaches down to guide you, firm but not cruel, and the momentary contact anchors a strange sense of orientation in the shifting environment. Each step up the gangplank is deliberate, measured. The rhythm of walking, the subtle tilt of the boards beneath your feet, and the quiet hum of activity around you form a sensory map, grounding you in this new reality. Above, the dock stretches endlessly, bustling yet strangely orderly. The cries of merchants calling out wares, the creak of ships' rigging, and the distant lapping of water against hulls create a complex tapestry of sound. Your ears, attuned to the monotony of the hold, now register the nuance of every tone, every inflection, each contributing to an unspoken understanding of this place. There is no grand welcome, no dramatic fanfare. Arrival is a quiet, insistent integration into a world that continues moving regardless of your presence. You are neither ignored nor specially acknowledged. You are noticed, catalogued, and expected to find your place within the rhythm of the docks, the ships, and the people who occupy them. And in that quiet realization, as the light settles across your face and the new air fills your lungs, the first step into life on this unfamiliar shore is taken, not with ceremony, but with observation, patience, and an emerging understanding of the immense task of adaptation ahead. The hold is behind you, and the world beyond is vast, demanding, and meticulously alive. The morning begins with a light that is softer than the harsh sun you have felt on the dock yesterday. It filters through the small openings of your quarters, teasing the texture of the walls, the roughness of the wooden floor beneath your feet, and the uneven weave of the mats or straw that serve as your sleeping surface. There is no time for lingering. The rhythm of labor starts with the first stirrings of the day. The air carries a quiet intensity. The mingling scents of salt water, earth, and distant cooking fires are layered, each one telling you something about the life of this place. Even before you rise, there is a sense of the work ahead, the soft scrape of a bucket along the floor, the low murmur of orders being given, and the faint clatter of tools being prepared. The environment itself becomes a teacher, guiding you through anticipation, alertness, and adaptation. Stepping outside your quarters, you notice the organized chaos of the compound. People move in patterns that are both fluid and rigid, bodies carrying out repeated motions with efficiency born of repetition. Some carry baskets of produce, others sweep paths, while a few tend animals or maintain the wooden structures that define the space. Observing them, you see the discipline and order that underpins survival here, the way small actions accumulate into a coherent daily rhythm. Your own tasks are assigned with economy. Instructions are minimal but precise, a gesture, a word, a glance that conveys the necessity of attention and care. You lift, carry, bend, and shift, each movement calibrated to the task at hand. The physicality of labor is immediate and absorbing. Muscles unfamiliar with this steady, sustained exertion protest initially, and then slowly adapt. Every sensation, the texture of earth between fingers, the weight of a basket, the friction of rope against skin, grounds you in the present. Time itself feels altered. There are moments when an hour seems to stretch endlessly, measured in the repetition of motions, the cadence of feet, the rhythm of breathing. There are other moments when the day collapses into a blur, when the sun climbs too quickly overhead, and shadows shift imperceptibly, but insistently across the ground. The work demands attention, but also grants a strange continuity, a constant that threads through the hours and anchors perception. Even in the monotony, there are subtleties that catch the senses, The warmth of sunlight on weathered wood, the faint creak of a door swinging on hinges, the whisper of wind across a field. Small details that would be unnoticed elsewhere become significant, almost reassuring. Observing them is not an escape. It is a way to measure time, to locate oneself in an otherwise overwhelming environment. The people around you are both guides and constants. Their expressions are controlled, revealing little, but their actions demonstrate the logic of survival. They show by repetition and example how to perform the work efficiently, how to carry oneself, how to navigate this world with the least resistance and the most endurance. Even when instructions are harsh or indifferent, there is a rhythm to their expectations, a consistency that, over time, becomes a framework upon which understanding and adaptation can grow. As the morning stretches on, the body begins to recognize the patterns. The mind, though alert, drifts occasionally to comparisons with the distant past, life in the hold, the sea, and moments before arrival. These reflections, layered over the present sensations, create a complex interior landscape, the physicality of labor intersecting with memory, perception, and awareness of a vast, imposing world. The first segment of your labor has begun, and with it, the intricate mapping of a day defined by movement, endurance, and observation. Each repetition, each small adjustment, each subtle gesture of guidance is a thread in the larger tapestry of life here. A life demanding resilience, yet teaching understanding through the slow accumulation of experience. The sun climbs higher, its warmth pressing steadily against the skin. Sweat gathers at the nape of your neck and along your back, a persistent reminder of the body's engagement with the day's work. Every movement now carries more weight, not only from the physical load, but from the cumulative effort of hours spent in repetition. Lifting, bending, carrying, adjusting. These are no longer isolated actions but parts of an ongoing sequence, each one linked to the next by necessity and endurance. The sounds of the compound have evolved with the day. Voices rise and fall in measured tones, interspersed with the creak of carts and the faint thump of tools meeting surfaces. There is no music, no deliberate entertainment, yet the steady rhythm of human activity becomes a kind of cadence, a background that keeps the hours moving in an almost imperceptible beat. Listening closely, you can identify subtle variations: the scrape of a shovel on earth, the muted thud of a heavy object set down, the whisper of cloth or rope shifting. Each sound marks a moment, a step, a unit of effort in a day that stretches on. There is little conversation directed at you. Instructions come sparingly, yet they are precise. A glance, a nod, a brief word. These gestures carry authority and expectation, and they serve to focus attention in the midst of motion. Your senses sharpen in response, attuned to the unspoken rules of efficiency and endurance. You learn the language of posture, the meaning of a hand extended at the right moment, the subtle cue in a worker's step or stance that signals a task needing completion. The repetition itself becomes almost meditative. Your body, while fatigued, finds a rhythm. The movement of lifting, carrying, and setting down begins to align with breathing, and a certain pattern emerges, a sequence of effort, pause, adjustment, and continuation. In this pattern, there is a strange comfort. The predictability of the tasks, the clarity of the required actions, and the knowledge that, though arduous, each step is understood and measurable. Around you, the environment continues its quiet instruction. The textures of the worksite are varied but persistent. Rough wood, damp soil, coarse rope, and woven baskets all tell a story of human necessity and adaptation. The sun's position marks time with subtle shifts in light and shadow, painting the surfaces in gradients of warmth and coolness. Even small, overlooked details, a worn patch of floor, the polished curve of a frequently used tool, the faint scent of dried vegetation, contribute to a fuller understanding of the rhythms and constraints of daily life. Your awareness extends beyond your own body. Observing those around you, the subtle differences in approach and efficiency become instructive. Some move with careful precision, conserving energy and minimizing strain. Others rely on sheer force, the exertion of raw strength. These contrasts, recorded quietly by your mind, add to a growing comprehension of what is required to endure, to function, and to anticipate the demands of the day. By mid-morning, fatigue deepens, yet it is not unmanageable. The body adjusts to exertion, muscles remembering motions repeated countless times, joints accommodating weight and strain. There is an ongoing negotiation between physical endurance and mental focus. Attention must remain on the work, yet awareness of surroundings, timing, and subtle cues is essential. The challenge is not only labor itself but sustaining an evenness of pace and precision over the hours. Small moments of observation bring unexpected clarity. A bird passing overhead, the glint of sunlight on water, the pattern of shadows shifting across a structure. These details, seemingly minor, provide brief intervals of reflection. They remind you that even in the strict confines of labor, the world outside persists, quiet yet present, offering a subtle counterpoint to the intensity of effort. As the morning transitions toward midday, you begin to notice the subtle changes in body and mind. Muscles warm and stretch with familiarity, while thoughts trace patterns from past experiences, distant memories, or quiet speculation. The work continues, demanding, unrelenting, yet increasingly familiar. In this repetition lies both challenge and instruction, a lesson in endurance, in observation, and in finding small constancies in a world defined by relentless labor. As the sun arcs closer to its zenith, the heat becomes a more persistent companion. The air shimmers faintly above the earth, and each breath feels thick with warmth. Movement requires more deliberation. The body seeks efficiency, conserving energy while maintaining the necessary rhythm. There is no rush, no sudden demand, only the unbroken continuity of tasks that must be met in sequence, day after day. Hands, now calloused and tender in turns, grasp tools and objects with a practiced grip. You notice the subtle changes in texture as surfaces warm under the sun. Wooden handles become slightly slick from sweat, the fibers of rope expand with humidity, and the earth itself yields differently as it dries in patches beneath the growing heat. These observations are quietly catalogued in the mind, each detail contributing to a growing sense of environment and expectation. The other workers move around you with a combination of familiarity and silent coordination. No words are necessary. Patterns have emerged that allow tasks to proceed almost without conscious instruction. One notices a container out of place, another adjusts the positioning of a load. Tiny, almost imperceptible interventions that maintain the flow. This subtle choreography underscores the communal nature of labor, where individual effort is inseparable from the collective rhythm. The sun's angle casts long, shifting shadows, painting the surroundings in gradients of light and muted color. Your eyes track these changes, noticing where the ground softens or hardens, where surfaces reflect warmth, and where slight shade offers a brief respite. These observations, though minor, are absorbed and remembered, forming an intimate map of the worksite that informs each subsequent movement. Fatigue deepens in layers. Not only the muscles, but the mind registers the steady exertion. Thoughts wander slowly, tracing patterns of past and future. The ways work will continue through the afternoon. The habits that must be preserved, the adjustments that might ease tomorrow's burden. This mental engagement is quiet, reflective, without urgency, allowing a parallel rhythm of thought alongside the physical labor. Sounds of the environment persist in a continuous low hum. The scrape of tools against surfaces, the shifting of loads, the distant murmur of others engaged in similar tasks. Each element becomes part of an ambient tapestry. Over time, these sounds are no longer distracting but anchoring, providing a subtle framework within which effort can be sustained. Small moments of tactile sensation punctuate the day, the smoothness of a well-worn tool, the resistance of a knot in rope, the granular texture of soil slipping between fingers. These are not dramatic or startling, they are quietly present, registering as gentle markers of the body's interaction with its surroundings. Each detail is noted without urgency, reinforcing awareness while maintaining a calm focus. By late morning there is a sense of progression, though not completion. The day stretches ahead, measured in rhythms of movement, observation, and subtle adaptation. The work is relentless in its demand for consistency and attention, yet within its repetition lies an unexpected clarity. Patterns emerge, understanding deepens, and a certain equilibrium is achieved between effort, observation, and endurance. In these hours, a nuanced understanding of labor begins to take shape. Not only the physical demands but the mental adjustments, the social coordination, and the environment itself are absorbed, creating a comprehensive awareness of the day's structure. Each small action, each attentive observation, contributes to a larger sense of mastery over the immediate tasks, even as the horizon of the day remains long and unyielding. The sun now rests high in the sky, its rays filtering down through the spaces between leaves, weaving patterns of light and shade across the ground. The air feels warmer, heavier, pressing gently against skin and clothing, carrying with it a mix of scents, dust and soil warmed by sunlight, the faint tang of sweat, and the occasional hint of distant foliage. There is a steady hum in this heat, a low, almost imperceptible vibration of activity, as life continues around you. Movements slow under the sun's insistence. Even simple actions, a shift in weight, a step forward, the bending to lift a load, require slight adjustments to maintain balance and minimize fatigue. The body, already accustomed to repetitive labor, adapts gradually, conserving energy while remaining alert to the subtle cues of the surroundings. Nearby, others adjust their rhythm as well. Some pause briefly, resting on a convenient surface, allowing muscles to ease their tension. There is no conversation, only the quiet acknowledgement of shared endurance, an understanding that the day's continuity relies on careful pacing and attention. You notice the gentle rise and fall of breaths, the measured cadence of hands returning to familiar tasks, and the almost imperceptible shifts in posture as comfort and strain negotiate a temporary balance. The environment itself participates in this rhythm. Heat rises in waves from the earth, shimmering across surfaces, making distant objects appear slightly blurred. Shadows lengthen and twist in subtle arcs, shifting with the sun's movement. Surfaces respond to touch differently in this warmth. Ropes and fabrics become pliant in the heat, wood expands and softens, and soil alternates between dry and compacted in minute patches across the workspace. Time flows quietly here, measured in sequences of small, deliberate actions. The mind drifts between awareness and reflection, tracking the day's tasks while noting the textures, sounds, and rhythms that accompany them. Each observation is absorbed without urgency, creating a slow, layered understanding of both work and environment. A gentle breeze occasionally brushes across the skin, providing relief from the heat, and carrying with it new scents. Distant earth, foliage, or the faint saltiness of water if it is nearby. These interruptions in the steady heat are subtle markers of change, moments that draw attention without demanding it, offering a sense of continuity within variety. As the hours progress, there emerges a quiet anticipation of rest. Not yet at the end of the day, the body and mind nonetheless register the approach of a pause. Hands linger slightly longer over tools, movements become more measured, and the pace of observation deepens. This is not urgency, but awareness, the sense that the cycle of work includes predictable intervals of recovery, allowing endurance to continue. Even in this restive anticipation, the senses remain attuned. The patterns of light and shadow, the faint murmurs of others, the textures of surfaces under fingertips, all these details form a continuous backdrop, quietly shaping perception. Awareness is calm, deliberate, and unhurried, providing a framework for sustained engagement with the day's demands. In these moments, labor and environment exist in a delicate equilibrium. Physical exertion, mental attentiveness, and sensory observation combine, creating a comprehensive experience of the midday period. Though the heat presses steadily, there is a rhythm here, a gentle ebb and flow that will carry into the later hours, guiding the body toward rest while maintaining continuity of the day's tasks. The sun has climbed higher now, and the warmth settles into every surface, saturating the air with a kind of tangible stillness. Movement seems measured by the light itself, each shift in shadow marking the slow passage of time. The heat presses gently, not painfully, but insistently, nudging muscles to relax even as the tasks of the day demand persistence. Hands continue their motions, but with deliberate care. Lifting, carrying, adjusting. They follow a rhythm that has become almost subconscious, a cadence formed through repetition and endurance. Fingers trace the contours of tools and materials with familiarity, finding purchase without thought. Surfaces that once seemed unyielding now yield slightly to touch, the grain of wood softened by sun, the soil giving way under careful pressure, fabric stretched by use and temperature. Around you the atmosphere is filled with subtle sounds, the distant rustle of leaves, the soft creak of wood under strain, a muted sigh of air moving across uneven ground. Each sound blends into a low, constant background hum, marking the continuity of activity without intruding on attention. There is no rush, no sudden noise, only the gentle layering of small, persistent cues, guiding awareness in a calm, unbroken line. Occasionally, the air stirs with a faint breeze. It moves unpredictably, brushing against skin, teasing hair, rustling loose items. The effect is minor yet noticeable, a small contrast to the persistent warmth. A reminder of change even with inconstancy. It invites a slight stretch or shift in posture, a small adjustment that provides comfort while maintaining efficiency. The work itself carries a quiet intimacy with the environment. Each action produces feedback, the way soil crumbles between fingers, the texture of a surface smoothed by handling, the slight give in a rope or tool under tension. Observing these subtle variations becomes part of the rhythm, a continuous calibration that sustains both task and body. There is a satisfaction in this attentiveness, not excitement, but a measured acknowledgement of skill and endurance. As the midday period deepens, there is a growing awareness of the approaching rest. Muscles carry the memory of repetition, signaling the body's limits without urgency. The mind, attuned to the continuity of action, begins to anticipate the pause, organizing perception around the forthcoming interval. This anticipation is not impatience, it is the quiet structuring of attention, a gentle preparation that eases transition from work to respite. The environment participates in this transition as well. Shadows stretch and tilt, light softening in certain areas, signaling the sun's slow arc across the sky. Surfaces cool ever so slightly in shaded patches, textures shifting subtly under hands and feet. The scent of warmed earth mingles with faint traces of moisture and plant life, a reminder of cycles beyond immediate labor, a broader continuity that frames daily tasks within the larger context of the natural world. Even in these quieter moments, awareness remains layered and deliberate. Attention flows between sensation and reflection. The warmth on skin, the firmness of a grip, the patterns of shadow, the distant movement of others. There is a careful observation of the day unfolding, an unhurried engagement with both work and environment. Each detail, no matter how small, contributes to a sustained sense of presence. In this balance between effort and reprieve, between warmth and relief, the rhythm of the day becomes tangible. Time seems both stretched and concentrated, measured not in hours but in the interplay of sensation, motion, and anticipation. The body, accustomed to repetition, finds comfort in its own continuity. The mind, freed from urgency, discovers space to wander and reflect, tracing the contours of the day with gentle attentiveness. The approach of rest carries a subtle gravity, an almost imperceptible slowing that the body welcomes, even as it remains engaged. Tasks taper gradually, hands moving with less urgency, feet pausing at the edges of movement, the gaze lingering longer on small details. The day's rhythm, once insistent, now softens, and the body's awareness expands beyond immediate labor to encompass the surrounding world. Shadows continue their steady migration, stretching across surfaces, pooling in corners, shifting shapes in patterns that are easy to overlook, yet impossible to ignore once noticed. There is a quiet fascination in watching the light bend and fall, a gentle entertainment that requires no effort, no conscious pursuit. The eye traces subtle gradations, the way a shadow deepens along a furrow in the earth, the delicate shimmer where sunlight strikes a damp patch of soil, the faint outline of movement elsewhere that disturbs the uniformity only slightly. The air itself is more pronounced in these moments. Each inhalation carries a weight of warmth and faint humidity, a texture almost tangible against skin. The faint scent of dust and plant matter rises with gentle currents, blending into a composite aroma of the working environment. Sounds layer slowly. A distant call, the rustle of leaves, the soft drag of tools, the rhythm of breath and movement, all blending into a muted, immersive soundscape. It is not silence, but a carefully measured quiet, the sort that allows thought to drift without demanding attention. As the body anticipates rest, there is a shift in posture and movement. Sitting becomes more natural, a slow descent to the ground or a supportive surface. Muscles easing into a temporary stillness without surrendering awareness. Hands, once busy with repeated motions, now lie loosely in the lap or on nearby surfaces, occasionally flexing in residual memory of work. The mind observes these small motions with a detached intimacy, registering each as a reminder of both labor and endurance. Rest does not arrive suddenly. It is a process of gradual disengagement, an easing of tension across muscle and mind. Awareness shifts from the pressing immediacy of tasks to the broader patterns of the day. Light, temperature, air currents, and distant sounds, all once peripheral, become the focus, marking the passage of time and providing a gentle framework for contemplation. This observation is neither judgmental nor hurried. It is simply acknowledgement, a careful noticing that soothes and grounds. The body, now partly freed from exertion, experiences subtler sensations. Muscles that once bore repeated strain relax in stages. Joints finding new angles of comfort, skin cooling slightly under the shade or air. Fingers and toes occasionally twitch or stretch, a quiet release of accumulated tension. There is a rhythm to these micro-adjustments, an internal cadence that mirrors the slower, steadier pace of the external world. Thoughts drift more freely now, following the ebb and flow of light and sound. Reflection on the morning's work merges with peripheral observation of the environment. Minor frustrations or difficulties fade into the background, replaced by awareness of endurance and continuity. The day itself, once a series of demanding motions, now presents as a flowing pattern, a tapestry woven from repetition, observation, and subtle adjustments, a pattern that the mind can trace without strain or urgency. In this delicate balance between activity and pause, the boundaries between self and surroundings soften. The warmth of the sun, the texture of surfaces under hand and body, the faint chorus of environmental sound, the scent of earth and foliage, all combine to create a space where attention can linger without tension. Rest is not yet complete, but it is imminent, felt in every careful shift of weight, in every controlled breath, in every extended glance at the slow movement of light and shadow. Here, at this midpoint of the day, the cycle of effort and ease is palpable. Work has shaped the body and mind, yet the promise of rest imbues each moment with a gentle anticipation. Time is measured in sensation, in subtle shifts of light and air, in the steady layering of experience. And as the day continues to unfold, there is a quiet understanding. The rhythm of life persists, with its repetition, its small triumphs, its gradual easing, and its inevitable transition toward the comfort of pause. The life of one individual in this era can be understood as both deeply personal and intimately connected to the wider currents of circumstance, economy, and geography. The morning's labor, the structure of the day, the careful tending of small routines. All these are threads in a larger, often invisible network that shapes existence. In the case of someone living within the transatlantic slave system, the ordinary, minute details of life are colored by broader forces that move unseen but relentlessly, carrying consequences both immediate and long-lasting. Consider the journey from one environment to another, a passage that is at once physical, sensory, and psychological. Each step taken on a sun-warmed deck, or along a riverbank, is layered with awareness. The texture of the surface beneath the feet, the subtle movement of air across the skin, the distant noises of life in port towns or inland settlements. These details form a lattice upon which memory and anticipation hang, shaping perception, even when the mind is engaged elsewhere. The cadence of work, the arrangement of tools, the subtle hierarchy among those nearby, all interact to create a lived rhythm, one that is neither random nor uniform, but persistent. The routine of preparation for transport, the inspection of persons, the sorting and counting, these actions form the biography of the day, leaving impressions on the body and mind. Hands recall patterns of repeated motion, back muscles remember the weight of labor, and the ears retain a low-level hum of controlled voices and instructions. There is a continuous calibration of body and attention, a negotiation between exertion and endurance, an almost imperceptible measurement of self against circumstance. Food, water, and rest, the basic necessities, take on a different texture under these conditions. Each morsel or sip is measured, each pause is framed by limitation and awareness of scarcity. The quality of provision, the timing of its delivery, and the order in which it is distributed are recorded in subtle bodily memory. These details, while mundane in isolation, accumulate to define a day, a week, a life. The external world interacts with these internal patterns. Weather, shifting light, the movement of other people, even the distant rumble of trade or machinery, contributes to an environment that is at once familiar, and constantly in flux. Observing the motion of sails on distant ships, the glint of sunlight on water, the faint, persistent smell of earth or salt or smoke. All these small elements combine to create a detailed, immersive landscape. It is a landscape that frames the individual's biography, that sets the stage for decisions, endurance and adaptation. Social hierarchies are quietly pervasive. Recognition of roles, the subtleties of authority, the gestures of deference or expectation, are all present, even in the absence of overt command. Body posture, eye movement, the cadence of speech. All these convey information, forming a silent network of social navigation. Awareness of this network shapes daily action in ways both conscious and unconscious, leaving an imprint on memory and habit. In reflecting on these lived experiences, it becomes apparent that biography is not only a record of events, but a pattern of interaction between self and environment. The rhythm of days, the repetition of tasks, the navigation of social frameworks, the absorption of sensory input, all of these constitute a form of documentation, a narrative that can be traced through quiet observation and measured reflection. Life in this context is at once constrained and detailed, harsh in its demands, yet rich in subtle textures and continuous learning. Even small moments of rest or reflection carry weight. A brief pause, the cool touch of water on hands, the scent of vegetation nearby, the distant call of a bird, or the soft creak of timbers, all register as a contrast to exertion and limitation, creating spaces in which memory, anticipation, and imagination can quietly operate. These interludes, though minor, accumulate to form a continuous, nuanced experience, one that shapes both identity and endurance. The biography of a day, therefore, is not merely a timeline of tasks and events. It is a multi-layered record of sensation, observation, adjustment, and reflection, intersecting with broader social and environmental forces. Each action, each pause, each interaction contributes to a mosaic of experience, forming a framework through which the individual navigates both the immediate and the extended demands of existence. And in tracing this biography, the vast scope of external control, the economic, social, and geographical forces that dictate movement, labor, and opportunity, becomes palpable. It is in this space, at this intersection of personal endurance and external imposition, that the lived experience of this period becomes fully visible, marked not only by the effort of survival, but by the careful, often unnoticed strategies by which a person preserves body, mind, and in small ways, a sense of self. The morning settles into its second phase with quiet insistence. Labor, observation, and adaptation merge into a continuous current. Each movement of the body is informed by the repetition of tasks, each breath measured against effort and environment. There is a sense of rhythm to these days. Though it is neither comforting nor forgiving, the sun moves across the sky, changing the light, casting shadows that stretch and shrink across wooden beams and cobblestone paths. These subtle shifts mark time more reliably than clocks or sundials, providing a framework for both expectation and adjustment. Tasks themselves carry a peculiar combination of monotony and urgency. The same motions are repeated, yet each repetition is slightly different. Weights change, surfaces wear, supplies shift. Each detail must be observed and recalibrated. Even seemingly minor errors can produce consequences that ripple through the day. Hands memorize the pressure needed to lift or tie, the motion required to stir or smooth, while eyes track minute differences in texture, distance, and alignment. These observations are internalized, forming an unspoken knowledge that guides action with minimal conscious thought. In this pattern of repeated observation, Certain moments stand out, not for drama, but for clarity. A particular sound of timber groaning under weight, the shifting scent of rain in the air, the glint of sunlight on iron or water, can provide small reassurance or signal adjustment. The body notes these cues, responding in subtle ways. Posture shifts, hands flex, steps change rhythm. Such sensory awareness, cultivated through necessity, becomes a constant companion. The social fabric of daily life is similarly intricate. The distribution of tasks and responsibilities is governed by tacit agreements and observed hierarchies. Every movement, every glance, carries meaning. Recognizing these patterns allows for smoother navigation through daily obligations. Even brief interactions, an exchange of words, the passing of a tool, the shared acknowledgement of effort, contain layers of information, guiding behavior in both immediate and long-term ways. Food and rest, often fleeting, remain central to endurance. Portions are small, often repetitive, yet each intake must be processed and conserved. Water, sometimes scarce, becomes a rhythm to which the body adapts. Opportunities to rest are carefully negotiated against the continuing demands of labor. These periods, though brief, offer a space in which reflection can occur. They provide the rare chance to notice details of the environment, the texture of soil, the pattern of leaves in sunlight, the distant hum of other activity. In these intervals, the mind moves quietly between observation and thought, cataloging the minutiae of experience. In understanding biography within this context, one observes that life is defined not by singular events but by accumulations. Each repetitive motion, each measured glance, each adaptation to shifting conditions, contributes to an intricate map of experience. There is a quiet mastery in this, a competence, born of endurance, observation, and reflection. Identity forms not through recognition or reward, but through continued engagement with circumstance, through the subtle shaping of self within constraints. Even as external pressures impose limits, there exists a form of agency. Small choices, though constrained, are consistently made. How to allocate energy, when to rest, what to observe most closely, when to speak and when to remain silent. These decisions, taken repeatedly, accumulate into patterns that sustain the individual within an otherwise rigid system. They are strategies of survival, nuanced and deeply internalized. By mid-afternoon, the day has developed its own internal logic. The body has adapted to its workload, attention has shifted to patterns of need and opportunity, and the mind has catalogued interactions, cues, and observations. What might appear from the outside as simple repetition is, in fact, a continuous process of perception, adjustment, and endurance. Within these layers one can discern the lived reality of existence, a steady, measured negotiation with both immediate and systemic pressures, quietly shaping each day into a structure of survival and subtle mastery. The biography/event segment in this chapter, therefore, emphasizes the interplay between individual experience and systemic forces, revealing a rhythm that is detailed, sensory, and methodical. Life is organized around the constant balancing of labor, observation, social navigation, and endurance, creating a deeply textured record of lived experience. By late afternoon, the rhythm of life has settled into its slow, predictable cadence. Limbs and muscles recall the weight of tools and objects without conscious thought, guided by memory and necessity. Every motion is informed by countless repetitions, yet each repetition contains slight variation, requiring subtle attention to detail. The body has developed a language of its own, responding instinctively to shifts in terrain, pressure, and position. The environment too plays a persistent role in shaping experience. Sunlight filters through gaps in wooden structures, shifting over surfaces and marking time with soft, incremental changes. The wind carries both scent and sound. Dust stirred from dry earth, distant voices, the faint scrape of wood against stone. Each detail is noted, consciously or unconsciously, informing how work is approached, when rest is taken, and how movement is planned. These environmental cues are subtle, yet essential, forming a quiet framework within which daily survival is negotiated. The social sphere continues alongside physical labor, its influence woven into every action. A glance from a colleague, the brief nod of acknowledgement, the careful allocation of tasks, all convey information about hierarchy, expectation, and social alignment. Understanding these cues requires attention and memory, a constant calibration of behavior to maintain both safety and efficiency. Each interaction, however brief, contributes to an intricate, ongoing negotiation that governs daily life. Food, water, and rest remain measured and intentional. Meals are consumed deliberately, their quantity and composition dictated by availability, routine, and necessity. Drinking water is an act of both relief and calculation, ensuring endurance while conserving precious resources. Rest, brief and often fragmented, offers a rare space for reflection, allowing the mind to consider patterns of labor, relationships, and the environment itself. Within these small intervals, awareness deepens, revealing the texture and cadence of life in detail. Endurance is not passive. It is a continuous process of adaptation and strategic action. Small choices: how to move efficiently, when to conserve energy, when to speak or remain silent, accumulate into sustained strategies that shape the trajectory of each day. These decisions are rarely dramatic, but are crucial for survival, forming a subtle architecture of daily life that persists amidst the constraints of circumstance. Even as fatigue grows, there exists a quiet form of mastery. Recognition of patterns, anticipation of needs, and careful observation of both the environment and social landscape allow the individual to navigate complexity with measured competence. Identity, in this context, is defined not by grand achievements, but by the consistent, nuanced exercise of judgment, perception, and endurance. As evening approaches, the physical and mental rhythms of the day gradually wind down. Work slows, movements become more deliberate, and attention shifts toward the immediate needs of sustenance, rest, and preparation for the next cycle. The accumulated experience of the day, tasks completed, cues noted, choices made, coalesces into a sense of continuity, a bridge between one day and the next. In reflection, the biography/event segment reveals a life shaped by repetition, observation, and subtle negotiation. There are no dramatic climaxes, only the quiet accumulation of experience, the steady calibration of body, mind, and social awareness. Within these rhythms lies a profound insight. Survival and endurance are cultivated not through spectacle, but through persistent attention, strategic adaptation, and the careful management of both external pressures and internal capacities. By the time evening has fully settled, the landscape of the settlement transforms subtly, but noticeably. Shadows lengthen across the rough-hewn structures, settling into quiet corners and under overhanging eaves. The air grows cooler, carrying scents of damp earth and smoke, a gentle reminder of fires maintained throughout the day. In these hours, attention shifts from the labor of survival to the intangible traces left behind by countless days, months, and years of human activity. Objects, marks, and arrangements tell silent stories, offering glimpses into lives that are otherwise unrecorded. Artifacts of daily life, worn tools, pottery fragments, and simple textiles, sit in muted repose. Each carries the imprint of human intention, use, and adaptation. Examination reveals subtle details. A chipped edge that hints at repeated use, a faint pattern etched into clay, or a smooth surface shaped by hands over time. These small, nearly imperceptible features provide insight into the routines and priorities of those who came before, revealing a constant interplay between necessity, creativity, and environment. The placement of objects in space conveys more than utility. A well-worn path between hearth and storage area, for instance, marks the habitual flow of life, a rhythm established through repetition, rather than written instruction. Small groupings of tools or personal items indicate areas of specialized activity, whether for craft, food preparation, or other tasks. Each configuration is intentional, shaped by practical needs but also by subtle social and cultural conventions, offering a window into human thought and organization. Consider the texture and materiality of these remnants. The roughness of woven fibers, the weight and grain of carved wood, the uneven coolness of stone surfaces, all provide sensory evidence of how life was experienced. Touch and sound, even imagined, allow a deeper connection, bridging the temporal gap and conveying more than mere observation could achieve. In these quiet interactions, a fuller understanding emerges. Life is both constrained and defined by its physical context, yet it is simultaneously creative, adaptive, and subtly expressive. Patterns emerge when multiple artifacts are considered collectively. Similarities across objects suggest shared practices, while deviations point to individuality, improvisation, or adaptation to local circumstances. Even absence is meaningful. Empty spaces indicate priorities, exclusions, or constraints imposed by resources, hierarchy, or environment. Through attentive observation, a nuanced picture develops, revealing a landscape of human intention layered atop the natural world. The settlement itself offers further insights. The alignment of structures with prevailing winds, sunlight, or water sources illustrates practical knowledge transmitted across generations. Walls and fences define communal and private spaces, reflecting social organization, responsibilities, and negotiation of shared resources. Simple features, thresholds, low platforms, or drainage channels, demonstrate ingenuity, adaptation, and ongoing engagement with surroundings. These elements are unassuming, yet each contributes to an intricate tapestry of lived experience. In the dimming light, one becomes aware that life is expressed not only in objects but in patterns of movement, arrangement, and habit. Observing carefully, one notices traces of labor etched into the earth, subtle signs of wear on frequently traveled routes, and faint impressions where tools were used or stored. These signs, though often overlooked in daily life, are essential for reconstructing routines, strategies, and even social dynamics. The settlement, when approached with patient attention, becomes a living document, silently narrating the continuity, adaptation, and resilience of human existence. By the end of this first part of the mystery/archaeology/culture segment, it is clear that understanding life through remnants and traces requires both close observation and an imaginative reconstruction of daily rhythms. The tactile, spatial, and environmental details provide a rich, layered understanding, revealing a past that is less about isolated events and more about continuous, methodical engagement with the material world. Night deepens over the settlement, and with it comes a heightened sense of stillness. Sounds soften, the distant rustle of leaves, the occasional call of a night bird, the subtle shifting of objects as the wind brushes across exposed surfaces. In this quiet, Details often overlooked during the day gain prominence. The curvature of a clay pot, the faint scratches along a wooden handle, or the faintly dulled edges of a stone tool now speak more clearly, inviting careful consideration of the hands that shaped them. As attention lingers on these artifacts, patterns of daily life begin to reveal themselves in more subtle ways. The distribution of certain tools or implements across spaces implies not just utility, but hierarchy and specialization. One corner may contain implements showing signs of heavy, repetitive use, suggesting work done by someone responsible for particular tasks. Another area might hold fragments of objects that are decorative rather than functional, hinting at personal expression, status, or ritual. Even small differences in size, weight, or wear tell a story about the diversity of experience within the settlement. The soil itself offers additional clues. Variations in texture, compaction, and staining indicate where repeated activity occurred, where fires were lit, or where water pooled and receded. Shifts in color or subtle depressions in the ground mark pathways and activity zones. These traces, though quiet, speak to rhythm and routine, revealing the invisible choreography of human life unfolding day after day. Attention to such minute details allows an understanding of life that is as much about habitual motion and careful adaptation as it is about individual moments. Consider, too, the interaction between these human-made elements and the natural environment. Objects placed near shelter may indicate practical concerns, keeping tools dry, food protected, or living spaces orderly, but also reflect a nuanced understanding of climate, terrain, and seasonal change. Materials gathered from the surrounding landscape, whether clay, wood, or fibers, carry with them the environmental context of their origin, further connecting human activity to place. Each item is thus a small nexus of labor, intention, and environmental interaction, quietly recording the entanglement of people and place over time. In examining these remnants, it becomes apparent that life was a careful negotiation between necessity and ingenuity. Objects were rarely discarded without reason. Each fragment, worn edge, or faded mark suggests cycles of use, repair, and adaptation. Even when broken or degraded, artifacts provide insight into decision-making, priorities, and the resilience required to sustain daily life. Observing these traces over extended periods allows one to perceive not just individual events, but patterns of continuity, change, and adaptation across months and years. Social structure subtly manifests in spatial arrangements and material culture. The clustering of certain items, the relative size or quality of tools, and the proximity of personal belongings all hint at organization, roles, and perhaps even unspoken rules governing interaction. Although these patterns are not overtly recorded, they emerge clearly through careful observation, revealing layers of complexity and intention beneath the apparent simplicity of day-to-day living. By the time darkness has fully taken hold, the settlement appears transformed. Every surface, every object, every indentation in the soil is imbued with quiet significance. Through patient attention, it is possible to reconstruct not just isolated actions, but a living system of routines, priorities, and adaptations. In the deepening night, these traces speak softly, guiding the observer toward a richer understanding of the rhythms, challenges, and subtle expressions of life within this space. The first two parts of this segment have focused on observation and interpretation of objects, spaces, and patterns. What emerges is a detailed picture of a community in motion. Individual lives intertwined with shared routines, practical constraints, and environmental influences. laid bare not through sensational events but through the patient, meticulous reading of the physical and material world. The early hours of night deepen the sense of stillness, and with it, the subtle details of life become even more apparent. Shadows stretch long across the compacted earth, softening edges and blurring the distinctions between objects. A discarded fragment of pottery, once overlooked, now draws attention. The faint grooves along its rim speak of repetitive gestures, careful hands, and the small rhythms of daily labor. Each artifact, no matter how modest, becomes a quiet narrator, hinting at routines, intentions, and moments of necessity that might otherwise have been invisible. Listening closely to the settlement in this quiet, almost imperceptible sounds emerge: the faint creak of wood as it settles, the whisper of cloth shifting with the breeze, the distant, rhythmic drip of water from a shelter's edge. These ambient notes, gentle and repetitive, mirror the persistent patterns of human activity. They remind one that life was largely composed of repetition, rituals of maintenance, preparation and observation, punctuated by occasional events that demanded attention, yet grounded in daily rhythms. Spatial arrangements, too, begin to speak more clearly in this dim light. Tools lie in subtle clusters. Food remnants occupy small, defined zones. Personal belongings, even worn or broken, hint at the roles and routines of individuals. Observing these arrangements, one perceives the invisible choreography of labor and rest, where tasks were prioritized, where materials were shared, and where spaces were shaped to accommodate both necessity and comfort. Nothing is random. Each placement carries significance, a reflection of daily decisions, and the interplay between environment and human intention. The surrounding environment frames these observations. The ambient temperature, the softness of the earth underfoot, the gentle rustle of leaves, all contribute to a sense of context. Materials sourced from near and far, wood, clay, fiber, connect the settlement to a wider landscape, a silent record of mobility, knowledge, and adaptation. The proximity of water, the direction of prevailing winds, and the orientation of shelters, all intersect with human activity, revealing a nuanced understanding of place and circumstance. Through careful attention, even subtle markers of social structure emerge. Differences in tool quality, the proximity of personal items, and the organization of communal versus private spaces hint at hierarchies, specializations, and shared responsibilities. These insights are never explicit. They are traced in the material culture, the patterns left behind, and the careful observation of spaces shaped by repeated human action. The settlement, in essence, becomes a record of negotiation between individuals, community, and environment, a quiet testament to adaptation and ingenuity. As the night continues, a sense of continuity becomes apparent. The repeated gestures of preparation, maintenance, and interaction link past routines to present traces. Patterns of wear and placement reflect daily life's persistence, revealing the resilience required to sustain the community. In observing this, one begins to appreciate the subtleties of existence, the ways in which work, rest, and adaptation intertwine to create a living, breathing system of human activity, rich in meaning yet free from dramatic spectacle. By the end of this segment, it becomes clear that understanding life here is less about extraordinary events and more about quiet attentiveness. The objects, the spaces, the soil, and the ambient environment collectively tell a story of rhythm, adaptation, and subtle complexity. Life emerges not as a series of dramatic incidents, but as a continuous, unfolding negotiation of needs, priorities, and interactions, a tapestry of routine, resilience, and ingenuity, gently revealed in the calm, patient study of the material world. The morning air carries a subtle crispness, diffused by the gentle light spilling over the settlement. Movement stirs slowly among the more privileged households, those who occupy the higher, better drained ground, slightly removed from the dense activity of the laboring quarters. Here, the rhythm of life differs, not because it is inherently less demanding, but because the demands are shaped differently, more structured, more ritualized, and often buffered by the presence of others who carry out the physical work. Daily routines begin with preparation rather than necessity. Clothes are smoothed, ties adjusted, and garments layered with a deliberate attention that reflects both social expectation and practical comfort. Hands run over fabrics, feeling textures and seams, sensing both wear and care. Meals are assembled with a similar attention, grains sifted and stored, water drawn from cleaner sources, and utensils maintained in a precise, repeated order. The patterns are quiet but meticulous, a reflection of a life where repetition signals status as much as survival. Surroundings in these households reveal subtle differences. Spaces are arranged with careful intention. Sleeping areas elevated, storage compartments orderly, and communal areas organized to accommodate conversation and observation rather than labor. Tools and materials for work exist, but they are often secondary, stored carefully, or maintained as part of household management rather than immediate survival. The air here smells less of smoke and sweat, and more faintly of clay, wood polish, and preserved food. Still grounded in human activity, but subtly mediated through labor division and resource availability. Interactions within these households are equally structured. Servants, apprentices, or laboring family members follow routines shaped by both custom and expectation. The social hierarchy, though not extreme, is ever present in small gestures, the measured deference of certain movements, the order in which tasks are assigned or executed, the implicit acknowledgement of responsibility and status, embedded in every repeated action. Observing these interactions provides insight into both human behavior and the shaping power of societal norms, the ways in which privilege, expectation, and routine intertwine to create a living structure that is both stable and quietly complex. Meals, though modest by modern standards, are orchestrated events. Ingredients are combined with attention to sequence and timing, each movement informed by habit and necessity. The process is methodical, grains washed and boiled, liquids strained, small portions of preserved protein measured and allocated. There is a rhythm here, almost ceremonial, yet entirely functional, demonstrating how the interplay of routine, hierarchy, and sustenance shapes the lived experience. As the day progresses, the rhythms of observation and oversight emerge. Duties are supervised, spaces checked, and resources accounted for. Even moments of pause, resting in the shade, listening to distant sounds of activity, observing the landscape, are threaded with awareness. Life in these households is not idle, but it moves at a slightly different cadence, one where choices, sequences, and subtle gestures carry weight, and where survival is less immediate but still present in the careful structuring of every moment. By mid-morning, the contrast with the laboring quarters becomes increasingly apparent. The sounds of the lower grounds, hammering, scraping, the shuffle of feet, persist in the background, but are filtered by distance and hierarchy. Here the listener can appreciate both the differences in pace and the underlying interconnectedness. The elite routines rely entirely upon the structured labor of others, creating a delicate balance maintained through repetition, awareness, and quiet negotiation. By late morning, the household has settled into its defined patterns, each movement choreographed by habit rather than necessity, yet still grounded in the tangible realities of the day. Light filters through windows, casting muted reflections across polished surfaces. The air carries faint scents of bread warming, herbs drying, and wood slowly releasing its warmth, a combination that signals both domestic care and quiet control. The individuals in these spaces move with measured intent. Fingers brush along surfaces to straighten objects, small adjustments made almost unconsciously. The rhythm is gentle but constant, an unspoken assertion of order. Each gesture, from lifting a cup to adjusting a chair, reflects an awareness of space, presence, and expectation. Even leisure is deliberate. Reading, conversation, or quiet observation unfolds within a framework of attention, a subtle performance of calm and control. Meals progress not only as nourishment but as social observance. Portions are considered, arrangements repeated, and the act of eating becomes a structured interlude between other duties. The physical motions, lifting food, sipping liquid, arranging small items, carry a soothing repetitiveness. Attention drifts to minor details. The grain of wood on the table, the way sunlight shifts across the room, the sound of distant labor continuing outside. Each observation is small, gentle, and intimate, shaping the perception of life in a way that is calm, yet attentive. Interactions among household members and visitors carry layers of nuance. Words are chosen carefully, tones measured, and pauses thoughtfully placed. Even silence is intentional, a space for reflection, for watching patterns unfold, for noticing subtle gestures in others. This social choreography demonstrates an unspoken understanding. Life here is a negotiation of behavior, attention, and presence, where structure provides comfort as much as it enforces status. Labor is rarely absent, though it manifests differently than in the lower quarters. Tasks include maintaining stores, preparing textiles, tending small animals, or overseeing production. Activities that require focus and repetition, yet proceed at a moderated pace. Observing these tasks reveals how effort and hierarchy intersect. Work is continuous but mediated, controlled and predictable, with each step carrying a balance of efficiency and ritual. By mid-afternoon, the household begins to settle into quieter intervals. Children, if present, are guided through small routines, folding fabrics, arranging utensils, or practicing skills that will serve them in later life. Their activities are observed, measured, and quietly directed, a reflection of generational continuity and the careful structuring of experience. Adult members may shift attention between tasks, noting changes in light, checking the status of provisions, or simply resting in rhythm with the day's slow cadence. The contrast with the laboring quarters remains evident, yet it is not emphasized with dramatic flair. Instead, it is integrated into the broader understanding of social dynamics, the quiet structuring of life, the consistent repetition of small gestures, the layered attention to environment and responsibility. The rhythm of privilege, while less immediately taxing, mirrors the predictability and dependence found elsewhere, highlighting the interwoven realities of survival, hierarchy, and routine. As afternoon deepens, subtle shifts in light and temperature signal the approach of evening. Movement slows, sounds soften, and the household adapts to a gradual wind down. The structured pace that has guided the day continues to offer comfort and clarity, a steadying presence that marks time without urgency, allowing attention to drift gently toward reflection and the encroaching quiet of evening. As late afternoon settles, the light softens further, stretching shadows across the household interiors. Surfaces, once gleaming in direct sun, now catch a muted glow, reflecting subdued tones rather than sharp contrasts. The ambient temperature shifts subtly, and the gentle warmth of the day begins to fade, signaling that attention must gradually move from activity to observation, from motion to stillness. Members of the household continue their routines, though each movement carries a slower rhythm. The folding of textiles, arranging of utensils, or review of notes unfolds with a careful patience, unhurried but attentive. Even repetitive motions offer an almost hypnotic cadence. The brush of cloth against table, the gentle tap of objects being positioned, the slight scrape of feet on stone or wood. Every motion is deliberate, practiced, and measured, contributing to the enveloping sense of quiet control. Conversations, when they occur, are subdued and intermittent. Words are precise, tones even, pauses extended, not out of necessity, but as a reflection of practiced calm. The language of hierarchy is present, though understated. Directives and suggestions mingle with casual commentary, creating a subtle interplay between authority, cooperation, and observation. Even the smallest remarks reveal attentiveness to order, to continuity, and to the persistent awareness of environment and social expectations. Outside, the sounds of the broader world soften. The distant hum of labor, the occasional call of an animal, or the faint rustle of leaves in the evening breeze provide a gentle backdrop. They are never intrusive, merely reminders of the extended context in which the household exists. Inside, domestic life continues in measured pulses, small tasks punctuating longer intervals of stillness, offering structure without urgency. By early evening, the household shifts toward preparation for rest. Meals are modest, quietly arranged, and consumed with minimal fuss. Utensils are returned to their places, surfaces straightened, and materials for work or leisure tidied. These final motions of the day mirror the earlier precision of activity, but are softened by the diminishing light and the collective easing of attention. Even in these small gestures, there is a rhythm that comforts, a repetition that reassures, a reminder that structure persists even as energy ebbs. Children, if present, are guided toward quieter activities, listening to stories, practicing simple skills, or observing the gradual dimming of light. Their focus is gentle, their movements slower, mirroring the overarching tempo of the household. Adults follow similar patterns, reviewing records, preparing for the next day, or simply observing the environment, noting changes in temperature, sound, and light. Each action is intentional yet subdued, part of a broader cadence that moves seamlessly toward rest. The day concludes not with ceremony but with quiet continuity. The social hierarchy, so evident throughout earlier hours, recedes into background presence, acknowledged without emphasis. The patterns of labor, observation, and interaction leave behind a sense of predictability, order, and gentle authority. As shadows deepen and evening fully settles, the household becomes a study in subtle rhythms, a space where structure and routine guide attention, soothe the senses, and prepare the mind for the stillness of night. The calm of the household mirrors, in a different form, the broader human experience observed across the earlier segments, the interplay of effort, survival, social structuring, and quiet endurance. Here, in these carefully maintained routines, there is evidence of how lives, privileged or laboring, are shaped by rhythm, repetition, and attentiveness, each small gesture contributing to the flow of existence, the passage of hours, and the gentle approach of rest. The final hours of the day settle with an almost imperceptible calm. The light, now fully softened, drapes the surroundings in muted tones, shifting from warmth to coolness as evening transitions toward night. Surfaces previously illuminated now blend into gentle shadows, contours softened, edges blurred. The world contracts slightly, attention drawn inward, toward the space immediately around you, toward the rhythms and traces left by the day's activity. This is a moment for observation rather than action. The mind can rest upon simple details, the texture of worn wood beneath fingertips, the faint scent of smoke lingering from earlier fires, the subtle hum of air moving through spaces that have absorbed the day's heat. Each of these small elements forms a tapestry of experience, one that is steady, quiet, and oddly reassuring in its constancy. Across the day, through labor, movement, and attention to others, a pattern emerges. Life was organized, harsh yet deliberate, and always structured. Here, in these final moments, the threads of labor, survival, societal expectation, and observation converge. The routine that may have felt relentless now reveals its persistent logic, its underlying rhythm, and its capacity to offer a certain stability, even amidst the challenges and suffering witnessed. You notice the subtle variations between spaces and roles. Where work once dominated, there is now pause. Where instruction and supervision held sway, silence begins to prevail. Even in the absence of explicit action, the imprint of structure remains. Tasks set aside neatly, objects returned to their places, notes or records secured, and bodies slowly releasing tension. This is the stillness of reflection, a quiet review of what has been endured, accomplished, or observed. The mind can linger on these small contrasts, the difference between the sun-warmed wood and the cooler stone beneath, the faint echo of voices now softened, the residual energy of movement that slowly fades into inertia. It is in these contrasts that understanding arises, a gentle awareness of how every moment, every gesture, and every decision contributes to the broader experience of existence within the household, the society, and the wider historical framework. Even the harshness of life, the labor, the deprivation, the inequities, can be observed with a kind of detached intimacy. The weight of these realities is present, acknowledged, but filtered through the calm observation of detail, rather than dramatization. In this space, the listener is not overwhelmed. Instead, there is room to consider, to feel, and to let thoughts settle alongside the rhythm of daily life, gradually softening toward rest. Night approaches without fanfare. The sounds outside continue their quiet cadence. The occasional animal call, the subtle movement of wind, the distant hum of water or activity beyond immediate sight. These elements form a soft, persistent backdrop, grounding the experience, and providing a gentle continuity with the wider world. Within this context, attention can relax, focus can ease, and the day can be allowed to dissolve gradually into memory, leaving the mind open for calm reflection and eventual sleep. As darkness deepens, the body's routines and responses to the day begin to unfold naturally. Movements become slower, deliberate, almost ceremonial in their unhurried pace. The mind drifts through recollections of earlier hours, touching briefly on moments of exertion, of observation, of negotiation, and of endurance. Each memory surfaces without urgency, its edges softened, its details presented as gentle brushstrokes rather than sharp lines. The spaces you occupy now are quiet, yet they carry traces of all that occurred earlier. Surfaces bear fingerprints, marks of wear, the subtle imperfections left by hands and tools. Each object, each mark, each shadowed corner, tells a story without needing explanation. You can notice the rhythm in these details, the way tasks were completed, the way spaces were maintained, the manner in which roles and responsibilities intersected. These rhythms are soothing in their predictability, even when the content of the day was challenging or harsh. Outside, the night moves slowly across the landscape. Air, cool and gentle, brushes against exposed skin. Sounds drift in from beyond walls or doors, the quiet rustling of leaves, the distant flow of water, a faint, intermittent call of an animal. There is no urgency in these observations, no need to respond. They are simply present, framing the mind's awareness in a continuous, steady backdrop. Consider the human interactions of the day, the hierarchy, the unspoken rules, the intricate balances of work, supervision, and care. Even where inequities and hardship existed, the structure itself becomes a point of understanding. The mind can follow these patterns with calm curiosity. How authority was exercised, how cooperation emerged, how tasks were coordinated. Each thread of action and reaction forms a web of daily life, a network of small events that together create the texture of existence. Within this quiet reflection, the listener can also acknowledge the extremes, the hardships, the suffering that were present, but these are observed with the gentle lens of understanding rather than shock or dramatization. For example, where labor was harsh, the description focuses on the weight, the duration, the persistence required, rather than graphic detail. Where hunger or deprivation occurred, the emphasis is on sensation, adjustment, and survival strategies, gently illustrating endurance without vivid distress. The transition from day to night mirrors the mind's movement toward rest. Thoughts wander more slowly, attention narrows to smaller details, and the awareness of the broader environment softens. The day's narrative, labor, observation, social negotiation, gradually recedes, leaving a quiet residue of awareness. This residue is neither anxious nor demanding. It is the gentle imprint of lived experience, softly reminding the mind of patterns, of resilience, and of continuity. As the world darkens further, the listener can let these reflections settle alongside the subtle rhythms of the night. The faint creak of wooden beams as they contract in cooling air, the occasional sigh of wind through thatch or leaves, the subdued chorus of distant life. In this environment, the mind's activity diminishes naturally, thoughts meander in soft loops, and the awareness of self blends into a calm acceptance of the surrounding space and time. The night has fully settled, and the spaces you inhabit are now cloaked in deep stillness. Shadows have lengthened and merged, leaving only soft gradients of darkness and faint hints of moonlight or distant stars. Every surface, every object, every corner has been gently traced by the mind throughout the day, and now these impressions dissolve into a tranquil awareness, like ripples fading from water. Movement becomes minimal, deliberate, almost imperceptible. The body adjusts to a restful posture, senses attuning to subtle sensations, the gentle pressure of fabric against skin, the quiet warmth or coolness of air, the faint creak of wood settling. Even in these tiny details, there is a rhythm, steady, predictable, and comforting, that mirrors the ebbing awareness of consciousness as it drifts toward sleep. Thoughts of the day, of labor, observation, negotiation, and endurance, now circulate in slow, looping patterns. They are soft recollections, lightly tinted with curiosity, rather than urgency. You notice the structure of daily life, the way roles intersected, the unspoken hierarchies, the small strategies employed to navigate the constraints of circumstance. Each observation carries a gentle, instructive weight, an acknowledgement of the world as it was, balanced with the distance that allows reflection without tension. The hardships of life, the endurance required, the resilience demonstrated, all are acknowledged subtly. Hunger, fatigue, discomfort, and labor, are present in memory but described through their effects rather than graphic detail. The persistent ache in muscles, the slow pacing of work, the careful rationing of effort. The mind absorbs these facts as patterns, as lived experience, without clinging to distress. Sounds of the night frame this reflective state: the whisper of leaves, the distant call of an animal, the subtle shifting of structures settling into darkness. These are steady, unhurried cues that accompany the mind's gradual withdrawal from active thought. Awareness narrows gently to sensation, rhythm and presence, allowing imagination to drift along the soft contours of memory and environment. In this final phase, the listener can let go of conscious narrative entirely. The day, the routines, the structures and hardships dissolve into an ambient background of awareness. Attention floats, unconcerned, moving from one soft sensory impression to another: the texture of air, the play of shadows, the quiet resonance of distant activity, until the mind rests comfortably within the enveloping stillness. The conclusion is neither dramatic nor celebratory. It is a simple, steady acknowledgement of continuity and survival. Life, in all its complexity and difficulty, leaves traces of resilience, traces of adaptation, traces of ordinary moments shaped by extraordinary circumstances. These traces are sufficient to hold the mind's focus, to offer a sense of closure, and to allow the listener to drift fully toward rest. With the night fully embraced and the gentle rhythm of observation and reflection complete, the mind softens, attention wanes, and sleep becomes inevitable. The world has been observed, understood, and gently catalogued. The story has reached its natural conclusion. The listener rests now, carrying only the calm, measured, and richly detailed awareness of the life that has unfolded, ready to move into the stillness of night.